So the video that I have posted online actually talks a lot more in detail about this image. I just wanted to kind of say that, as you can see, when you look at this one, and maybe when you look at this version too, this one actually looks a little bit, this maybe better, but here you can see, here you go. Now you can see that it actually is badly damaged. So instead of painting it in fresco, which was traditional, Leonardo da Vinci devised an experimental technique. Basically, he's using a base layer of thin white lead paint, and then he used layers of paint on top of it, but the dampness of it prevented them from drying properly, so it flaked off. So by the mid-16th century, figures were seen with difficulty. So, I mean, even during his time, these figures were kind of hard to see. It's been repainted several times, never by him. They kept calling him back and asking him to come and fix it. He never did. Then you can see today in this image, but maybe better in this one, that there was a door that had been cut out into the middle of it, right there, and that was cut in the 17th century. And then here in this angle, you can also see that we have the Sforza family crest up there, or I'm sorry, their coat of arms as well. Leonardo da Vinci returns to Florence in 1500, and it's there that he paints the famous Mona Lisa. The identity of the sitter, so who the woman is that he depicted, is still debated today. Vasari, who's basically an early art historian that we've talked about before, says that it is 24-year-old Lisa di Antonio Maria Girardini, who was the wife of a Florentine, and that the Mona part is actually just a shortened version of My Lady. Other scholars speculate that maybe it was actually commissioned by Giuliano di Medici, so it doesn't represent Lisa di Antonio Maria. And some other scholars speculate that it's actually a self-portrait. So here's an image that somebody put together to show how this possibly could be a self-portrait. Other people speculate that it is a depiction of his lover, but evidence suggests that he was rather ambivalent to women. Perhaps it's his male lover in female clothing. We're just not really sure. Other people suggest that it could be his mother or the Princess Isabella of Naples. So you can just see that it's constantly debated on who this woman is in popular culture and also scholarship as well. Vasari tells us that Leonardo da Vinci worked on this image for 3 years, but he never gave it to whoever the patron was. He kept it with him, and he took it with him to France. Behind the woman is an imaginary landscape. You see that in the background. This just means that he made up this landscape. Like, he didn't go anywhere and sketch this landscape. He just made it up in his mind. But it does show one of Leonardo's loves. So apparently one of the things that he really liked to do is he liked to get to a high point, like maybe on top of a hill, and then like look out on the landscape. So this really kind of does look like, you know, you're standing on top of a hill and you are surveying the landscape, and this is what you see. So it does show his love for like being up on a hilltop there. The usual 3/4 portrait, that was pretty standard, has actually been expanded to a half-length portrait. So we basically go to just a little bit below her waist. Now, one of the things that's really unusual and intriguing about the Mona Lisa is that usually when you have your portrait done during the Renaissance and before, you would be adorned in your best clothes and jewelry. They loved to depict themselves with jewelry in this period, of course, because that shows your status, you know, that you're wealthy. But here, the Mona Lisa does not wear any jewelry. So that's a little bit confusing. Leonardo da Vinci does paint her in this strong kind of triangle or pyramid format that Raphael will also pick up on later. Another really intriguing thing about this image is that people have talked about a lot is her smile, and also how her smiles doesn't seem to match her eyes. Now this is very subjective, so maybe you look at her and you see like, maybe you think she looks bored, maybe you think she looks slightly entertained. To me, I kind of think that her smile suggests like she is amused, like she's smirking. But then her eyes they don't really seem to match. She doesn't have that sort of glimmer in her eyes that would carry over if you were kind of smirking at somebody. Instead, her eyes look rather bored. So some people have described her eyes as being very cold or mysterious. She does depict the standards of Renaissance beauty. So she has plucked eyebrows. You can see she doesn't really have any eyebrows. And a shaved hairline. So you can see how large her forehead is because she's plucked or shaved her hairline. Her gaze kind of shifts to the right, and some people view this as her being flirtatious. There is a sense of serenity and inner strength in her look. She does seem kind of non-wavering. She's very solid, very firm. One of the things that Da Vinci does to create a unified composition is that he used a lightly tinted varnish, which results in kind of a smoky overall haze called sfumato. And it kind of makes the appearance of the image being sort of soft focused. And I know that this has Leonardo on top of it, but maybe you can kind of see that here in this image a little bit better. So it almost makes it kind of soft focused. Now the Mona Lisa actually today is super famous, and we all have seen it. We all know what it is. And as you can see here, it has been the topic of many internet memes. But the Mona Lisa wasn't always famous. In fact, it probably first started to become more famous when an English critic, whose name was Walter Pater, wrote in his book, which was called Studies in the History of the Renaissance. He wrote it in 1873, and he writes this very romantic description of the Mona Lisa. And he's comparing her to a vampire who knows the secrets of the grave because she's died and come back so many times. So he makes this like really romantic kind of story or description of the Mona Lisa. And so that really puts her into kind of the public mind. Then in 1911, one of the employees of the Louvre actually steals her, and that is really when she hits the mainstream. I think she's missing for like 2 years, and then they finally catch up with him when he's trying to sell the piece to a Florentine gallery, and then she's eventually returned. But that's really kind of what puts her into the public mind. And I just brought this slide in so you could see kind of some of the amusing ways that that people have used Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Now, few of Leonardo da Vinci's works were ever finished. We do have a lot of his sketches and writing, and there's been lots of scholarship on him and his paintings. So I just brought this in so you could see a few of his paintings and one of his sketches. Again, sometimes art is very subjective, and to me, I always think that this woman and this man who's playing John the Baptist, a young John the Baptist, do kind of look like the Mona Lisa, just a little bit. The next artist that we're going to talk about from the High Renaissance is Raphael. And he actually had a pretty short life. He lived from 1483 to 1520. So he was only 37 when he died. Raphael was originally named Raffaello Santi. We just call him Raphael for short. He was from Urbino. He came to Florence in about 1505. There he had an apprenticeship. And we also know that his father was a mediocre painter, but he died when Raphael was 11. When Raphael ends up in Florence, he's actually pretty quickly successful. He's not as much of an innovator like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, but his art has a noble quality, and he makes idealized individuals move with dignity and grace through a calm and ordered world. So he really does kind of embody the Renaissance and Greek classical ideals. His figures have an easy motion, and he is a superb technical painter. This is his small Cowper Madonna, or Virgin and Child, from about 1550, and it's oil on wood panel. So one of the people that he studied with was the artist Perugino. And in his work, Raphael really retains the delicate tilt of the figure's heads and his tranquil, even mood and lighting. And so he does get that. I just included this so you could see what his teacher was creating. From Leonardo, who we just looked at, he gets the simple grandeur of monumental shapes and also that pyramid composition. So remember when we were talking about the Mona Lisa, we said it was like a triangle format or a pyramid? Well, Raphael will do that as well. Raphael actually makes the pyramid a little bit more definite by adding drapery. So this drapery kind of enhances on both sides, especially this one. That's great diagonal there. That really enhances the shape of the pyramid or triangle. His figures are more curvy than Leonardo da Vinci's and also than his masters. The Virgin Mary is fuller than what we've seen before. She's not as slender or delicate. She looks more real. She is a solidly modeled form. She is softened by a clear, even light of this outdoor setting, which is something that it seems like he really enjoyed painting. This one, the one that we're seeing here, is depicted on a hilltop, and we actually see the Church of San Bernardino in the background. And that is about 2 miles outside of Urbino, and that's where Raphael grew up, so he knew it from his childhood. Personally, I think Raphael is a little bit more successful with his depiction of the Christ child to make Christ child actually look a little bit more like a baby than other artists. But, you know, Da Vinci actually doesn't do a bad job either. Not compared to what we're going to see when we look at mannerism. In 1508, Raphael left Florence for Rome. Pope Julius II put him to work decorating rooms in the papal apartments. In the papal library, he painted the 4 branches of knowledge as conceived of during the Renaissance or in the 16th century. And that is, the 4 branches of knowledge would be religion, philosophy, poetry, and law. The image was meant to summarize the ideals of the Renaissance papacy with harmoniously arranged forms in rational space and calm dignity of figures. The shapes of the walls and the vaults of the rooms inspired the composition of the paintings. One of the images that he paints in this room is the School of Athens. He painted it from about 1510 to 1511, and it is a fresco. It's pretty large. It's about 19 by 27 feet. Now, Julius II may have controlled the specific subject matter of this painting. Raphael uses that full-of-the-eye arch, that trompe-l'oeil, that we've seen before. And inside of that, he is depicting the Greek philosophers Plato and Aristotle. And he places them on the left and right of the vanishing point, so they're right there. They are silhouetted against the sky, so that's to represent the natural world. These 2 philosophers were considered the 2 greatest philosophers of antiquity. Now Plato, we can see here, there's Plato, he gestures upwards, and this is to say that the ideal is impossible to attain on earth. Aristotle gestures downwards to emphasize the importance of gathering empirical knowledge from observing the material world. In these sculptures, in these niches, we see Apollo and Minerva. And of course, Apollo is the god of sunlight, rationality, poetry, music, and the fine arts, while Minerva is the goddess of wisdom and mechanical arts.